Good evening, everybody. Hello. This is your school teacher asking you to quiet down. All right. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our inaugural Dev AI event here at Automattic. We're thrilled to have such an incredible room of builders, thinkers, and creators here tonight. And while you're here, if you'd like to meet some of the folks at Automattic that are leading our work, I'd like to introduce you to a few. So we have James LePage here. James, would you stand up and just give a wave? He leads AI here at Automattic. Matt Miller, who leads our machine learning, and Mathías Ventura, who leads our architecture. So they would love to meet you later when we're having our conversations after the fireside chat, and so those are the faces to look for. So to open our series, we couldn't imagine a better conversation. Both of our guests have spent their careers shaping the open web, questioning how technology should serve people, and building platforms that empower creativity, community, and innovation. John Borthwick is the founder and CEO of Betaworks, and he has been at the front edge of technology for more than 30 years, from early web platforms to voice, messaging, and now AI, investing in incubating products that push the internet forward. Matt Mullenweg is the CEO of Automattic and the co-founder of WordPress. And he helped democratize publishing for over 2 decades, stewarding one of the largest open source communities and championing the idea that software and knowledge should be open and accessible. So tonight, they're going to explore where AI meets the open web and what creative and human-centered technology looks like in this next era and how we build tools and values that endure. So please join me in welcoming Matt Mullenweg and John Borthwick.
Hello. Wow, what a turnout. This is amazing to have, but I knew John would bring the people. By the way, thank you, John, so much for doing this. Yeah, 30 years, I'm 22 years, so we're both feeling a little old, but it's funny because when I came in, you were kind of like, I felt like you've been doing this a little while. I know we had that brief introduction, but I want to get into some sort of John Borthwick Betaworks lore. So you were one of the first investors in Airbnb, Groupon, Twitter. Tell me about those investments back in the day.
So when we started Betaworks in about 2007, and you mentioned Twitter, so after a few twists and turns, we did a few things early on at Betaworks, but we sort of very quickly gravitated into the Twitter sort of ecosystem. And, what back then seemed like a very active, very open development community and ecosystem around Twitter that was actually innovating far quicker than Twitter. And so that lasted a few years. And certainly, one of the companies that we built in the early days was Bitly, and Bitly became an integral part of Twitter. We also were involved with something called Surmise, which became the search engine for Twitter.
Yeah, they bought it. It was one of the best acquisitions, actually.
Yeah, it was. There was about 11 people at Twitter when they bought it, and so Surmise, and then TweetDeck. You remember TweetDeck?
Yeah, that was y'all as well.
Yeah, wow. yeah. TweetDeck. We were very active early days in Twitter, and I saw the. I really wanted a multi-column view of Twitter.
Yeah.
And then I came across TweetDeck, and it was one developer who was in the UK, and so I put him on a plane and flew him over, and we ended up investing. So, which was great. He still complains to me this day that we put him on Air India flight, which cost like $400. And he was like, he was upset about that. But other than that, it turned out just great. So
So
But
that's
was-
amazing for Twitter. So basically, like a lot of the DNA of what we consider Twitter X today was
Yeah.
early days Betaworks.
And then you mentioned
Groupon, Airbnb, everyone said no to Airbnb. So you must have been. They famously like had 100 rejections.
So I jumped over Airbnb because we didn't actually do a seed investment in Airbnb.
That was later,
We sold, I think it was Brian Pokorny's company to Airbnb, so we became Airbnb shareholders
Gotcha.
through an
Yeah.
acquisition. But we weren't, yeah.
And then I believe, which is also connected to why we're here today. So if you don't know, all of the art on the wall here is actually all Tumblr artists. So every single piece of art is either from a Tumblr or WordPress artist. And I believe you were very early on Tumblr.
Yeah, I think we wrote the first check. I mean, I met David and he was working. There was in those days there was this sort of early movement called, I think it was called Tumble logging.
Yeah. Actually, David and I were both at CNET Networks at the same time. We were both employed by CNET. And we both left and started different companies.
Yeah, so and Tumble logging was just a sort of subset of blogging, and there was, I mean, I think the primary characteristics were big font technology, beautiful layout, big images. It was just a different way of, it was a different form of self-expression.
It's competitive with Twitter as well, though, especially at the time.
I mean,
so like, how do you manage that as an investor?
Yeah, so I mean, at the time, people would say, I mean, it's like Bijan and a couple of other people asked about that, and I mean, I think that very often when technologies are very new and the spaces are very new, everything seems like it's overlapping, and then as the entire space sort of grows, I think you start to see the distinctions. I mean, I think, fast forward to today, OpenAI and Anthropic, I think a year ago, 2 years ago, people would have thought were overlapping. Today, they're beginning to start to seem distinct, where one is serving more developers, one's more end users, businesses. And so you start to see that. I think that, at the beginning, it seemed like the two things were very related, but pretty quickly they started to look different.
And as one of our investors, Tiger Global, once said to me, no conflict, no interest.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's.
I think that in particular, look at Betaworks, Matt. I mean, you know this, but we have always been sort of very, we have kind of a thesis or a love in the world about something.
I used to be very precious about conflicts, and now I'm like, hey, you're an investor.
Yeah.
Like you're an adult. You can,
Yeah. And since we're focused on a particular area and we have a love for a particular area, there's going to be overlaps. And so it's kind of like, I think in our approach, I mean, I rarely think about like portfolio theory or any of those things. I just think about the areas of technology that we love and that we want to work with and work with founders around.
Now, take me back to some of those early days with like the Tumblr and when you're doing all this stuff, because New York had a tech scene, which I would say was parallel to San Francisco in many ways. And like you, Fred Wilson, Kevin Ryan, maybe Pioneer Works with Dustin Yellen. I don't know if they came later, but like, I feel like y'all were the kind of like progenitors of this like whole New York tech scene. So like, tell me about what that was. Like, what distinguished it from San Francisco?
So, I mean, I started, I did my pre-Betaworks, I did my first startup in '94. And in those days, the New York tech scene was very ill-formed and very young. And it was, there weren't a lot of technologists here. Right, and so it was very hard to find. I mean, I think that the majority of engineers that came to the web came from Wall Street, and so it was, it's just like, I remember Hillary Mason, who was on the Bitly team. She started up a thing called Hack NY, which the headline for Hack NY was "Keep our kids off the street." Meaning, keep the kids
off Wall Street.
Off Wall Street.
I love that.
And so, so back then it was very much, it was a very small community, but there was I think that, what's distinguished New York is that, we have here in New York, we have a whole set of industries that are, once upon a time, one related to tech.
You said 7 industries?
The whole set.
A core set. Yeah.
A core set or a whole set. And so it probably is around 7, but there's obviously financial services, it's obviously media, it's advertising, it's design, it's fashion, it's all of these. And
I've always actually loved the influence of art in the New York tech scene. I felt like there's always been a lot more presence of art. In fact, one of the early events I came to here was run by the New Museum.
Yeah.
They did like 7-on-7. They had hacker events where they paired like artists with engineers. I was paired with an artist, and we did a project, and it was really fun.
So that was one of my projects, 7-on-7.
Yeah.
So I was on the board over there, and I said, hey, let's just use the hackathon format and put an artist together with an engineer. And I've forgotten who we paired you with, but do you remember?
I think his name was Evan something. It's escaped me, but he was an incredible artist. Does like a ton of cool graffiti stuff and everything like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was really 7-on-7 is still running, and it was a remarkable format. The first NFT was minted at 7-on-7.
That's right. Yeah.
Neil Dash and Kevin McCoy got up there, and this was about 6-7 years before NFTs became a thing. They got up there and they said, "Hey, we put a JPEG on the
blockchain."
On the blockchain. And,
what you created.
Little
did you know.
I think Neil Dash doesn't like on his resume. That is not the first thing. But,
I don't think he puts it on there actually.
But it was brilliant. It was brilliant. We had Aaron Schwartz there too, which was brilliant. So Ai Weiwei on the artist side. So part of the superpower of New York, I think, is all these other adjacent industries that come together, and definitely design, right? I mean, sort of one of the words that you hear sort of more often than not around the tech scene these days, believe it or not, is taste. And I think that taste is a reflection of design and culture, and we have a lot of culture. You may not like it all, but we have a lot of culture here in New York, and that is, I think, one of the superpowers of this city versus other cities.
So fast forward to today, we just had an election here in New York.
We did. We are now, we're going to be a socialist state.
Any thoughts like you want to share on?
I mean, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I've been lucky enough to have sat down with the new mayor a couple of times and talked to him. I mean, I have a lot of conflicting thoughts. I absolutely love I just gravitate towards the energy and the enthusiasm and the positivity of this campaign, and sort of the vibes. I think that I grew up in the UK with actual socialist governments, and outside of China, there aren't really many good examples of state managed capitalism working. So lots of passion, lots of big promises. I think people. The real issues that have surfaced, affordability, and people's ability to live in the city and make a wage in the city, I think are the most. They're critical. I am worried that 80% of the workforce in the city is white collar, professional services. I think the next 3-4 years, AI is going to transform. Parentheses, upend quite a few of those businesses. And, I asked him specifically about this, and it's not an area of focus. It's not something which he knows much about. And he said as much. But I'm worried that all the sort of, consulting firms, the banks, the accounting firms are, you see anecdotal data that entry-level jobs are dropping. Supposedly year-over-year entry-level jobs in those companies is down about 15% over the last year.
Wow.
And so
And already doesn't like JP Morgan now have more employees in Dallas than New York? And
in Texas, yeah. So financial services are leaving New York, which, I think that, so there's quite a few challenges, structural challenges in the city that all ladder back up to the affordability issue. Because, I'm concerned about, how it's all going to play out.
it's funny, John Arnold, amazing investor, speaks about Houston. He's a Houstonian like me. And I'm going to paraphrase, but he's like, Houston has no natural beauty, no like hills, no like anything to make it like not great weather. And so the city government actually has to work really hard. And so there's amazing parks and the roads are very clean. They get fixed potholes immediately and the crime is good and all this sort of stuff. So city government has to be very responsive. And it's why it's gone from, I think, the 145th largest city to the 4th largest city in 100 years. Cities like San Francisco or New York, which are so amazing in so many ways, almost have what economists might call like a resource curse, where they're blessed with so many things that make they can get away with a lot.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know, I'm kind of curious about that.
Yeah. No, I agree. And I think also, if you think about the sort of reasons why cities have flourished over the last 100 years, and then, through COVID and through the sort of, how we're working today, and also obviously with AI, it's just like, do cities, the reasons for cities change, right? I mean, I think you have a lot of amazing European cities that I think are basically large functioning museums, which I think is, which is really sad.
They're basically like tourist places for Americans and Chinese to go. Like,
yeah. And so we don't want to become that.
Well, fast forward, by the way, and I'll say like now that we have a new mayor, like just like any new leader, like rooting for him, So, and he's put together some pretty interesting folks on his team and other things. I'm amazed he's met with you already a couple times, so it gives me a lot of hope. So let's judge by the actions, not by as he even said himself, the poetry of campaigning to the prose of governance.
Yes.
As the rubber meets the road, I'm sure there'll be some compromise and some ways everything works out. But I want to fast forward to like, how's the tech scene in New York today?
I mean, I think it has. So I'm going to mention something which I don't know if I've talked to you about, but one of the things we decided to do about almost a year ago is we're planning a big party for celebration of 30 years of New York Tech, and so we're going to formally announce this in a couple of weeks. I assume this is not breaking news. The tech scene here is doing great. It has changed so much in the last 30 years. So I bring that up because...
You also have offices for all the AI companies here and everything. Like, it's amazing.
Yeah. It is, I think it has deepened, it's widened. You've got a flourishing sort of core tech scene. You've got a lot of technology that's around media, a lot of technology that's around fashion, a lot of technology that's around obviously advertising, obviously fintech. You have there's biotech here, which is actually flourishing, which is kind of amazing.
And every serious tech company has an office here. Even Spotify has like a great office here in the World Trade Center, and
including
OpenAI,
Automattic.
This is actually our best and biggest office, where we're famously distributed. People think we don't have any offices, but and we're actually doing a big experiment here. Part of why we're doing this event is we're spinning up an in-person AI team here. So if you like this space, if you dig the neighborhood, the cafe downstairs, everything, if you like to come here every day, like we've got some great jobs that we're going to be in person. And it's kind of because we're famously asynchronous distributed.
Yeah.
And I think that is an amazing model. I've obviously been one of the biggest advocate for it. We've done it since 2005. However, part of our secret sauce for why that works is meetups. So getting people together in person. and AI is moving faster than anything I've seen in my career.
I know, it's
and so
extraordinary.
we're just going to do an experiment where we're like, okay, let's have a team that's together, 5 days a week. And that's totally different from what 99% of automaticians signed up for and like a whole pitch for why to work here. But we're going to do an experiment of like doing literally the 180 opposite of what we normally have done.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's extraordinary. And I mean, you came by yesterday. We just wrapped up one of our accelerator programs. So we run these.
I'm going to sing his praises. So I got to, they did their demo day for Betaworks. And I was blown away. And oh my goodness, what these companies are able to accomplish. And it's a 13-week program.
Yeah. 12, 13 weeks.
12, 13 weeks. Like what they were able to do and launch and the polish of the like when I started Automattic, like we were not anything close to that. What companies are able to do is like so incredible in such a short time. They're getting revenue. They're having like fully fleshed out products.
Yeah. So this particular one was, the theme of this, because each of our programs are they're small sort of cohort niche themes, because going back to the early days of Betaworks, we've always had a point of view around the world. And so the theme of this program was new interfaces for AI, because I think that the Chatbox and the evolution of the search box are both really interesting ways to interact with these models, but there's a bazillion other ways.
It's kind of the command line era. We're like in the DOS era of AI.
Yeah. And I think we should be able to unwind down to that, because the beauty of the command line is that it's sort of you're going back down to the essence, and then you can come back up, and you can go back up in any direction. So we had 9 companies who were demoing yesterday. One of them, just to give you a sense of the diversity, one of them, which is a New York-based startup called Patina, are training custom models on smells. And so they basically have trained and figured out all the receptors in the average human nose. And they can both take existing scents and create synthetic versions of them, create essentially like fingerprints of the scents, and then create synthetic versions for a fraction of the price. But they can also create smells that have never been smelled before. So you could have an automatic smell, Matt.
We do have some candles throughout that. We go with Le Labo, Santel.
Automatic.
I thought about commissioning a custom smell actually for the office because scent is so evocative of memory. It's like, and smell can take you places. So I've thought about it actually.
Yeah.
Do you have a scent at Betaworks office?
We do not have a scent at Betaworks office yet. But Eau de Founder.
So my home, I do Margiela Jazz Club.
Yeah.
It's kind of my home scent. Office scent is like Santal 23 and from Le Labo. But we'll see. Maybe something custom in the future.
Yeah. So we can.
It's kind of funny to think about like what's a great smell for an office. You want it to be like a little energizing, like maybe some citrus notes, but also like this is kind of a vibey office. So it's like
something that wakes people up. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
It's a little bit fresh. So anyway, yeah, not where I thought we'd go today.
I also, there's an amazing company that's doing, they were able to do like a brain computer interface.
Yes.
But from reading, but through the head without needing like all the crazy things.
Non-invasive.
Yeah.
Yeah, non-invasive. This is a company which is called New Brain. And, they actually came from the West Coast for this program. So, half the companies in the program came from the West Coast, which I love. So, so those guys are creating essentially custom models on EEG patterns in your head. And, they did a demo yesterday, which was pretty remarkable, but where, they show an image and then you can see what somebody's thinking.
Now, I'm also an investor through Audrey Capital, done over 100 angel investments. And one thing I've noticed, I'm curious what you're seeing, is there's still like 5%, and particularly some of the AI companies who are like intense, hardcore in person. But basically everyone else is distributed now. Like what used to be hard to convince is now like people are building these distributed teams. They're getting together. So I'm curious, like of this cohort, like obviously they came together for the, the program, but like, where are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that many companies, I think that there were cycles of development in a company where there was like an incredible amount of value of just being face to face and being able to, in the early days of Betaworks, right? We used to, we tried where we built a lot of things internal to Betaworks. So like as a venture studio, things like Giphy and things like that, and Bitly in the early days. And I would often say, I want one person to see if they can instantiate this like fully. And part of the theory there was that I thought that the actual process of the I/O process of you actually trying to explain to me what the fuck you want to build was so complicated. It was better for you to just build than for me to just build, and to try to create a first like sketch of it, and then you could start to build a team around it. So I think in the early days, really valuable to be IRL. But then companies go everywhere. Look, I mean, Hugging Face was in one of our early programs at Betaworks. They are very distributed, right? And so,
a lot that come out of open source. Open source is by nature very distributed. Are you still building things? Because I remember you had like a game Dots, and like how much are you like incubating or like building things in house?
We are not building. Thank you. This lady keeps like poking her head around, going like microphone.
Sorry.
Yeah, I'll remember. Are we building things? We haven't built something for a couple of years. We have been working on something which I don't want to talk about right now, but so we sort of reserve the right to do that. The way that I've set up Betaworks is that we can accelerate, build, and invest. I mean, we actually bought some things, right? I mean, once upon a time we bought Instapaper.
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah.
And we had, we were lucky enough to temporarily have Digg at Betaworks, which was
which has now been back with the original founder, right?
Yes.
Alexis Ohanian and Kevin Rose.
Yes.
So like Reddit and Digg have come together.
Yeah, the original founder and the original competitor.
Yeah. Which is kind of like, I mean, Tumblr was a big competitor of WordPress. So like, it's kind of funny.
Oh, that's funny.
These things come together.
Yeah.
I think actually, even when you compete in a space, you have a shared vision for the world.
Yes.
So you actually, like, if there's a way for you to work together, it's actually amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So where did this thread start? Can you?
I was saying, how much do you build now? So you said you got one thing in stealth.
Yeah, we got one thing in stealth, but we're not building much right now.
Yeah. Okay.
So lots of accelerating. We do 2 programs a year, and then we do straight investing.
So I noticed you've been active, and you tweeted a bit about like famously the American AI companies, including the ones called Open. Are typically a little bit more proprietary.
Yeah.
Although to their credit, they have released some open source stuff and some open weight things of some older models. China has taken like an open source first approach, which has been incredible. And there's been incredible things coming out of like Quinn and DeepSeek. You can argue how much copyright respecting or, like the exfiltrated, technology from has been stolen that's going into that. But I'm curious your thoughts on like the intersection of open source and AI. Like what's going on? What's going to happen there?
I mean, it's really hard to. I mean, it's really hard to like comprehend. I think it's sort of more than one brainful to comprehend just the speed at which all this is happening, right? So this, I mean. Everything started 3 years ago, right? The release of ChatGPT or GPT 3.5 was around November 3 years ago. So it started 3 years ago. What you're referring to, and DeepSeek and Quen and everything, really started a year ago.
It's
right?
wild.
Right, yeah. The R1 models, I mean, it's just like this a year ago. So it's like, so the whole open source AI question, I think, is being completely upended and diffused in the last year. A lot of the knowledge and technology is being diffused, and the ecosystem in China is working, I think, far more effectively than the ecosystem here. which I think is a problem. I think we have to get open source. Open source is a critical component of the entire infrastructure of the web, and it is going to be a critical component of the AI and the intelligence revolution that's being built. And so, either we do it and the US open source alternatives, or we're going to end up being dependent upon Chinese alternatives. And the Chinese,
which is also a little concerning because the security profile of LLMs is completely open. Like the ways you can prompt inject and the sort of latent spaces that you can have things, and like it's kind of incredible. Like it's not secure. Like we haven't yet begun to map out like how to secure these things.
And particularly because these open models, right, the ones which I'm running, they're local, and so it's your most important data. And so I think that the idea of having a Chinese model running locally on your machine is something that is something people should think carefully about, and we as a society should think really carefully about that. Coupled with that is the Chinese.
But when it's open source, you can see how it works.
You can.
So
if it's open weight and you can really see how it works. The other thing is that we're starting to see the Chinese are really innovating very aggressively at the chip level.
Yeah.
And so there seems to be, I think we can expect that there's going to be Huawei and other chips that will be specially optimized for some of these models.
Yeah.
And so then all of a sudden you have the beginning of a stack that is, a non-US stack for AI. So look, if you go back 3 years, right, I think that there was a brief period 3 years ago where for the first, call it, 4-6 months of this revolution, it felt like Satya and Sam and Sundar, all begins with S, not sure why, but all three of them felt like they could lock it up, like Microsoft, Google, and OpenAI. And Microsoft and OpenAI as a pair.
Well, and Amazon, Anthropic.
And then
I'll give that as another alliance.
Emerged, and so about a year in, you started to see multiple state-of-the-art models.
Yeah.
Closed models, but multiple. And you have Grok, and you have other ones now. So now I think
don't get out of Elon.
Now we're in a position where we have, call it 10, 15 really good closed models, and then thousands of open source models. I think the amount of capital that's going into this space, some of it, the growth we're seeing and the actual usage and the actual depth of usage in companies and people is remarkable, but some of this is predicated on this concept or this quasi-religious concept of AGI or ASI.
Which I love that you love that quasi-religious, because it is kind of like a new, there's a savior, there's a rapture, there's a whole there's a lot of parallels to the great religions.
Yeah, and it's very tied with, I think, the longevity movement. I think it's very tied with sense of both a sense of meaning and a sense of a desire for sort of human perfection. I had a conversation with somebody on the West Coast a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about succession planning or succession, and I thought they were talking about the TV series, and they were talking about species succession.
Ah, wow!
And it just took me a minute to
No, the West Coast conversations it's a whole different culture.
Yeah.
I haven't been yet asked at a party in New York, what's your P-Doom?
Yeah.
By the way, what is your P-Doom?
So look, I do not believe that we're on a straight line to a ASI or AGI, right? I think that and this may be the quaintness or the stupidity of just one human. But I believe that our intelligence is more than what's it between my ears. I think that our intelligence lives in our bodies. I think it lives in the world. I think I think that until we can actually have, world models, that we can actually instantiate things in the world, I don't think we're going to be anywhere near to a true intelligence of that kind. That said, is the stuff which we have today is amazingly powerful. That said, is that I think that if people start to believe that we can create another intelligence, it's hard to, I wonder if that is enough to actually, if enough people believe that that is what is happening.
Well, couldn't you argue that it's already happened?
Yeah, does that not make reality?
Like when I interact with some of these models, it does feel like an alien intelligence. Like we've created Andre Karpathy calls it like we've created Ghost.
Yes.
Like they're like it does feel very agentic, very like
I really like I like using analogies like alien and almost like wild animal or like another thing, because I think it externalizes it, and it also makes it clear that like my dog has all this intelligence that I don't have around the world of scent, but now I have that.
You have AI to help with that.
Now I have that scent model. I can like get that. I can catch up with my dog. But
and someday hopefully understand your dog. Like some of the stuff
Yes.
that's going around, like understanding the language of animals is incredible. Check out
Yeah.
the Earth Species Project if you haven't seen this.
Aza Raskin. Yeah. So I think that I think that externalizing this and thinking about this as another kind of intelligence, a different kind of intelligence, instead of this, I think, is fairly myopic view that we're trying to actually recreate ourselves. We have a pretty good way of recreating ourselves. Takes a bit of time, but it works. And so, yeah, so I think we're quite a ways away from that. I also think that there's signs that some of these models are like beginning to cap out in terms of capabilities. I think that there's
Is
incredible
that capabilities, or are we just waiting on the next generation of power and NVIDIA chips and other things?
I think that, I mean, the short answer is I don't know. But
Or is it data? Or we run out of data?
Yeah, I think it's all of the above, but I also think if we may need to move beyond the transformer. And so I think the transformer has gotten us like really far, but I think that maybe you need something more than attention, or you just need to, there's another step function there.
I'm a little bit of a transformer maximalist, although I think we should simultaneously invest in alternative architectures, because clearly the human brain running on 20 watts, about 10 watts is what we call intelligence.
Yeah.
There's obviously radically more efficient ways to do these sorts of things. So
Yeah.
now our boot time is longer. It takes, 10, 20 years
Yeah.
to pre-train. But there's obviously some different approaches I think are very interesting. If you haven't seen it, I just blogged by the way, I'm on a 46-day blogging streak.
Wow.
Go to ma.tt, no www, no .com, ma.tt, and the blog yesterday was the Andre Karpathy Dwarkesh interview.
That's a great interview.
It's a great interview. He goes into some of these models and alternative ways of training and other things. It's really beautiful.
Did you hear the Richard Sutton one?
Not yet.
That one is great.
I saw some excerpts from it. Yeah.
Because he talks a lot. I mean, Sutton is important on this because the author of the Bitter Lesson, and he talks very eloquently, I think, about experiential data
And where we might cap out, right?
where it might cap out, but the need for experiential data. That as you and I are discussing, right? This is very rich data exchange that's going on here, that's connected to the people here. And a lot of it is about our experience, both together as people, but all the knowledge, the embedded knowledge that we have around both speaking in situations like this, but of each other. And I think that experiential data, much of which lives in world models, or needs to be instantiated in world models, I think is really good.
I've heard speech is like 10 or 20 bytes per second, but then there's obviously vision and smell and lots of other things that happen. Yeah. So
Back to smell.
I did want to save some time for audience questions because we have an incredible audience here. I know Dave Weiner, the inventor of RSS and podcasting, is here. We got some great folks. So do we have a mic that can go to the audience, or can I? Yeah, we do. So raise your hands if you have a question for John or myself. Well, right over here. Yeah.
Yeah. One brave soul.
You get a bonus for kicking us off.
Yeah.
And please share your name.
Thank you, thank you. My name is John.
Hold the mic really close.
Can you hear me?
That's better. Yeah.
A little closer?
Yeah.
All right.
There you go.
My name's John. From Zeus, Nintendo, Bill, whatever. This one's for you, Matt. For WordPress specifically and other things that you're focusing on, how do you see yourself competing against, and I know you already have the market, but for like Lovable, Bolt, and these other AI-powered website builders, what is your angle to prevent them from taking over your market share if there isn't any? Maybe you feel like you can work with them and grow them.
That's a big one. One, I think these companies are all amazing, and I'm very supportive of any, my life mission is democratizing publishing, commerce, and messaging. So anything that makes it more accessible for people to create things, I think is sort of net positive for the world. Now, one thing that's going to be interesting to see how it plays out is because these also are kind of like full stack development platforms as well. And in some ways, they're not just competing with WordPresses of the world. They're also competing with OpenAI, Anthropic, Google, etc. And so it's very, very interesting how much I'm curious in the future, like 5 years from now. Let's say 3 years. It's hard to say 5 years. Who knows what's going to happen? Let's say 3 years. How much we're going to be interacting with kind of per product AI models versus we'll have an AI that exists more at like the browser or operating system level, which then has access to all of your context and your data and the memory of who you are and everything like that. And then that will just do things. It'll use the applications. And I think that benefits actually existing applications that have UIs that are very robust and really rich functionality. The other thing I think is obviously the creation of software is incredible, especially when you one-shot something that would have taken you forever. It's kind of magical. But all great engineers know that 95% of the work of software is in the maintenance and the iteration, not just in the creation. And so as these agents become not just it's not just a better onboarding wizard, essentially, but actually becomes something that can maintain and grow something over time. I think that'll be really beautiful. And what I'm actually hopeful for, and we're actually working with companies like Vercells, V0, and other things, is having some of these models be able to build on open source. Because how amazing is it if you're not creating user script system or content management or whatever from scratch, but you're building on something that already exists that's quite robust. WordPress, Drupal, any of the open source projects that have often decades and many, many thousands or tens of thousands of person years of effort put into creating a really robust infrastructure. And then they can do the 10% on top of that that's truly custom and unique. So I don't want to make any predictions here. And we obviously have our own versions. We have something called Big Sky, that's a creator. If you haven't seen Telex, it's actually really cool. Telex.automatic.ai. Is that this is a Gutenberg block creator that's kind of like a V0 or a Lovable. You can create entire apps. You can create Doom as a WordPress block and everything. And it creates a plugin you can install in any WordPress in the world. So the generative capabilities of these things are pretty exciting. I think, I love that you talked about the UI. So we all have access to the same models. And they're getting cheaper on really rapid scales and better very rapidly, faster than Moore's Law. And so we're all going to have the ability to do some of this stuff. I think it's really going to come down to what's the ecosystem and what's the UIs around it. And also I'm curious what the business models will be. Some of these services are kind of expensive. It's funny because I have trouble like getting people to pay like $5 a month for like a full website and CMS and everything like that. And like some of these things are like $40 a month or $30 a month for like some like link in bio sites. Actually, those are the ones that drive me crazy. But it's a beautiful example. They've created a great like use case, marketing, UI, everything. Like obviously you can make a link in bio with a Tumblr or with a WordPress or anything else like very easily, but they created a really like tight thing. And some of these businesses are like 40, 50, $60 million in AR, which is impressive. So
Thank you.
thank you.
I think there's one. Oh,
Go ahead, yeah.
Hi, Paul Mooney. Matt, how does WordPress live with AI? Today, if you're hosting a blog, the crawlers are coming every day. So even if you're hosting on AWS and Anthropic is coming and crawling, they're not giving you a discount.
This is an interesting question.
And then when it comes to content, it just pops up in the searches. So why should I go to matt.com?
No, I should go to mi.tt because it's a good blog. Well, I would say actually it's a golden age of being a creator. And so, like, yes, I think just like when Google used to update their algorithm, there's winners and losers. In sort of like a more chatbot-driven search world or AI mode on Google or whatever there is. And just providing like information generically might be commoditized in a way. But, you know, I think you're still going to follow great writers, great thinkers, great chefs, great everything. Like we have these, like, it's built into our sort of humaneness to like follow creators. And I love that now that's being also disintermediated. You know, like musicians now getting huge deals without record companies and everything like that. Like the direct relationship between like fans and followers and creators that was like many of the companies that you did around social media, like sort of pioneered this. I think we're actually in a golden age of this. I'll share some sort of data that we see from across, because I see a lot of the traffic on the internet. Traffic is actually still trending up. And I experience this myself when I use Perplexity or Google search. It gives me the answer, but I find myself actually visiting the sources, partially because of this hallucination problem and other things. So like where before on Google, I might click like the top result, which, you know, it hopefully is the organic result, not the ad. Although they make it very confusing now. And in the sort of LLM world, search world, I often find myself visiting many of the sources. So I'm visiting more sites than I used to. I think it's also incumbent on us to create great website experiences. So I think some of the media companies and other things that have like, you know, you go and there's like 20 pop-ups and like cookies and newsletters and paywalls and all these sort of things that are kind of user hostile. Like we need to create a better user experience for websites as well. And the final thing I'll say though is that while human traffic is up a bit, it's still growing, the bot traffic has exploded. And I don't know if they're just like bad crawlers or what's happening, but we're seeing some of the bots from large companies that will not name having literally like 40, 50, 60 times the server load as a Google bot, and obviously sending much less traffic. So something needs to be figured out there because there's not like a model for this yet. And it's kind of like hurting the open web because all the independent web hosts of the world, like the dark matter of the web, WordPress and other things that powers the hundreds of millions of domains that aren't just centralized. It's really distributed and spread across many, many servers. And those servers are now getting like melted a little bit. But
can I ask a follow-on question?
Please.
So specifically, I'd love to hear a little bit about what you think about the CloudFlare stuff that's going on. And also, I mean, specifically, media's news companies. I mean, I was speaking to Nick Thompson at the Atlantic, and
who was actually here a few days ago.
Oh, he
did
was?
a book talk on his new book, Running Grounds.
But traffic is all the news sites, right? Traffic is down. Inbound search traffic is probably down like 20%. In New York Public Radio, I certainly know it is. So. How do you think about sort of the evolution of those patterns, what Cloudflare is doing? How do you think about this? Because it's certainly, the open web is changing.
Cloudflare is in a very similar position to us, that they see a lot of the traffic of the internet. And so, you know, I've spent a lot of time with Matthew Prince on this. I really love what they're doing, especially around like bot authentication. There's some very sketchy stuff happening now with some of these AI companies where they're spoofing. Um, you know, they're essentially crawling, but spoofing, regular user agents. There's also now a weird gray area, which is when I'm using a browser like Comet or Atlas or something like that, and the AI is doing things, but I'm watching it do it on my browser. Should that identify as, is that bot traffic? Is that human traffic? It's kind of, but it's human initiated. Asked the AI to do something. You can go to the AI and say, make this WordPress block. So there's, I think, one, we need like sort of a authentication layer for like true crawlers and bots. And there's some great standards around that CloudFlare and others have talked about. Two, we probably need like a new identifier for when it's not just a human. It's human initiated, but not a human actually clicking the buttons. And what that looks like. And we have some, by the way, we have lots of sort of prior art for this around, like, for example, browsers now support things like prefetching a page. Like when you hover over the link, it'll start loading the page. But it tells the server, like, hey, I'm preloading this. So don't count it as a view until I actually click on it. And then it fires off different events on the preload versus the actual load and other things. So there's some prior art for this as well. And then, what's actually like truly users. So now the payment stuff, micropayments, everything, gosh, I've been hoping that's been going to happen for 20 years. Kind of the original sin of the internet was that this stuff was never built in. Payments were not, Mark Andreessen talks about this actually, where they sort of like put off like any sort of native payments layer. And still, 30, 40 years later, we're still hodgepodging, all the 20 different checkout options and Apple Pay and Link and Shop Pay and WooPay and all these different things. So that stuff, the sort of standards first approach, we'll see. I'm now a little bit more of a realist where I think like, let's build some great user experiences and great apps and then sort of extract standards out from that. I also think that there is opportunities and there will be new platforms created. I'm very excited to see what companies like OpenAI come out with, like new computing paradigms. And perhaps that can have things like payments built in from the very beginning. And in fact, WooCommerce supports a new agentic sort of commerce. So basically like the agent can like check out, buy an item on your behalf. So that's kind of, we're sort of with MCP and other things, we're kind of creating like a new internet on top of the existing internet that has some of these things built in, which is pretty exciting. I think we got time for like one more, maybe? Okay, well, we'll do the last two here. So maybe here and then back there. I think you had it. Let's do the back first because you were waiting a little while. And then we'll come up to you. You'll close it out here. So I hope it's a good one.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. I feel like you guys have seen the internet and you've seen technology go through a bunch of cycles. As technologists, we often think about things as always being new, and AI is incredibly new. What is something in the history of technologies? Like, what are some of the analogies or the things that you guys have seen play out that you think would help us kind of understand the future of AI? Like, generally, what's the history? What really kind of jumps out at you as you look at this new wave? Thanks.
Can I take a shot?
Please, yeah.
I'll take a first shot. I mean, one of the things I think is totally remarkable about this, about AI is from the very beginning of computing, this was you go back and von Neumann, Turing, they were all talking about this. And it's how many times normally technologies get built as sort of stacks. I don't know, let's say with a car, right? Sort of move from horse-drawn carriage to combustion engine to eventually to Tesla, maybe it's something beyond that, hopefully. So there's and I don't think the people who were driving horse-drawn carriages were we're going to create an electric car one day, But it's I read a wonderful book a couple of years ago called The Maniac, which is about John von Neumann and his work. And, he was when he was working at Princeton after the war, at the Institute for Advanced Studies, he had government funding. He built this computer, which was similar to the ENIAC, was called Maniac, and he was using it to run H-bomb simulations during the day. At night, he had a crazy-ass Norwegian-Italian engineer who came to him, a guy called Niles Barnicelli, I'm sure I'm mispronouncing that, who was running simulations of digital life.
Which now Steve Wolfram does a ton of amazing stuff.
Yeah, but it's just like the idea that digital life, that von Neumann was like, I mean, he was like running simulations of, of death during the day and digital life at night. It's really weird. It's really amazing that the roots are actually so deep. And I would argue that a lot of particularly the quasi-religious ones that we talked about, go back to very base human, I want to say instincts, but maybe it's just desire for permanence, longevity, something beyond yourself. And, I think that the roots here are really deep, and I think it's really useful to go back and to read some of that stuff, because I think it gives you a sort of it definitely gives you a deconstructed view of where we are today, because I think that since we've gotten so used to the computer metaphors of today, desktops, Windows, mouses, all this stuff. And suddenly you go back to those early things, and you really see it's sort of like going back to the command line. It's like in the beginning. So you sort of, I think that it's worthwhile looking back. I don't know, there's a half answer to yours.
No, that's a beautiful answer. What I'll say just very briefly is, I think in history, the best probably analogy is actually electrification. So like the invention of electricity, which for a while, all we had was like the telegram, but then it started to affect every single industry and like the infrastructure rollout and everything like that. I think AI is actually going to bring us like the true promise, original promise of computing and technology and everything like that. We're now going to start to realize that in an incredible way that'll affect productivity in every single industry in radical ways. And so I'm a bit of my PDoom is not zero, but it's pretty low. And I'm generally an optimist for how this is going to enable productivity and incredible abundance in the future. I was actually pointing at you there. Sorry. Sophie, I'll let you go because I know had your hand up for a very long time.
Thank you. My name is Ani. I'm a user experience researcher, and so the point you raised about we being in like the command line era of AI, that stood out to me. And I'm just curious to know, like, from where you are, like both of you, like, what do you think, or like, what are your predictions about how the UI of AI can kind of like evolve in the future? Kind of how we went from the command line windows to like point and click, direct manipulation, that kind of UX. And what does that mean for these companies who are probably building on the same underlying model, as you said, but how can they differentiate themselves on user experience, and how easy it is to kind of just like go from thought to creating value for you or like for your business?
That's a big question. So I don't think we'll be able to address it all. But I think, to me, there's things today that AI is already like super magical, amazing, perfect at, like translation, the voice stuff, image editing, video generation. Like some of these things that are like, it's almost like a revolution has happened and the world has changed completely and we're all just walking around like it's normal. But like, just like, you couldn't have predicted necessarily Uber when the iPhone came out. But like, I think these will start to enable things that'll, we'll take for granted, but we'll be able to look like the new AirPods that do real-time translation. Like that shipped. This is like what's it called, the Babelfish from that's there. Like we had the Star Trek like technology of like the tricorder and like translations and everything like that. And this is I think that the sort of ripple effects of that becoming more widely adopted and like us figuring out how to use that as a society are going to be quite profound. So that's the main thing I'll say is that, and hopefully, whether technology is transformers or LLMs or whatever it is, that's sort of like leveraging these new sort of way of computing and building things, it'll be deeply embedded. And the most beautiful interface is when you have no interface at all, when we just take it for granted. And things that were once new technology, like for example, you're wearing glasses. At some point, that was a new technology. And imagine the world before glasses. People just couldn't see things. And now all of a sudden we take for granted glasses or contact lenses or LASIK. Like we now, everyone can have perfect vision basically for the vast majority of folks. And so these sorts of things, I think, they'll become invisible. Like we don't think of glasses as like tech anymore. Although now with the meta stuff, we do.
Let me, so I'll pick up where you, so I think that there's this tension in both innovation and computing cycles between sort of pulling towards the generalized solution versus the specific solution. And I think different technologies, I always believe technologies have a grain to them. I think AI is actually pushing outward. So I am seeing a ton of like really interesting sort of like purpose specific, use case specific, whether they're small devices. And this maps very much with the sort of incredible commoditization that we've seen of all the hardware sensors in the device and your ability to produce something in China. So I'll give you an example, not to plug one of our companies, but there's a company called Sandbar that's gone through their sort of initial pre-launch this week. You can check it out. But they have a beautiful ring that is similar to my Aura ring, but I can lift it up and I can just talk to it. And one of the things that's remarkable about it, because I've tried it, is you can whisper, like really, like it's nobody. You're in a meeting and you can just say to it, "Remember the milk," and it automatically then organizes.
Sci-Fi had this, the idea of like sub-vocalization, like you
Yes.
have like a little patch on your throat and you can sub-vocalize and talk to something.
Yeah, which I think is the so this is but this is a very simple piece of technology that's very well designed. I mean, a lot of the work that they did was actually in getting the Bluetooth connectivity to be, and the latency to work and work so well, and also to be sort of power efficient. So it's like a lot of stuff around power efficiency and use. But then it's really kind of a software experience. But unlike the AirPods, I mean, look, Apple has a huge vested interest in making sure you pull out the rectangular piece of glass every so often out of your pocket and look at it. And I think there's a lot of energy right now pushing outwards to the periphery and to, I think Internet of Things can maybe become a thing finally. So I think because it becomes an intelligent Internet of Things. And so I think we're going to see a lot of like new devices and amazing, like there's a woman who came by Betaworks and who showed me the poetry cam, which is
Takes a picture and writes a little poem about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a Burning Man thing project like that. Was this the one? Same one?
Yeah, it prints out a little poem. I mean, it's beautiful. And it's like, and it's very weird because it's like you think you're taking a picture and the other person thinks it's a picture and they're smiling and you get a written poem. So just moving across modalities like that. But I think that we're going to see a lot of really wonderful and interesting sort of single purpose things. And,
Well, I think that's a beautiful place to end. Also, a movie recommendation. I just rewatched Her. I don't know if you've seen that recently. Holds up very, very well, actually. This movie was, I think, it's 10 or 11 years old. Beautiful, beautiful movie. And actually, there's so much inspiration that comes from sci-fi books like the Culture series by Ian M. Banks. Like, there's a lot of not just a lot of it is dystopian, obviously, but there's a lot of like protopian, positive views of how AI can impact and technology can impact the world. And what's kind of cool is the people building the technology have also been influenced by this. So they're literally trying to create it. And like Minority Report interfaces are now becoming real and things like that. So it's kind of fun to see art influencing tech, which influences art, which this whole loop. By the way, you could have been anywhere in the world tonight. You're here with us. Thank you for listening to us at 1x speed. We went a bit over time, but this was a really amazing conversation. I want to say thank you so much to John Borthwick. You have been a huge inspiration to me and the world, and thank you. So our next Dev AI NYC event will be after the holidays on January 7th. So keep an eye out for that. We'd love to see some of you all back here. We hope to see you there.
Socialist state of New York.
What's that?
In the socialist state of
In socialist state of New York, yes.
Yeah.
For now, please enjoy the food, drinks, and conversation here at Automattic's NoHo space. And thank you all for being here.